All right, we continue on with our season previews. On this episode, we have Ken from Sin Bin Vegas coming on to chat Vegas Golden Knights season preview. Ken, how you doing?
Hello. What's up, guys?
Long time no chat, but a lot has changed with your team since the last time that we spoke. So let's kind of dive right into it. Some pretty big departures. Obviously, Marsha Show probably being the biggest one. A couple smaller ones. Stevenson, Amadio, Martinez, and Mantha. And then coming in, I'm going to mess up this name, so Nick, you should probably help me. Dor Dorofiev. Help me out.
Close enough.
Dorofeyev, yeah.
Yeah.
Dorofeyev, yes. And Olofsson. What are your thoughts on the offseason for the Knights?
It was tumultuous to say the least. They went from being whatever they were, 10, 11, 12 million dollars over the cap when they were playing Dallas, at least the games that Alec Martinez played. Everyone liked to act like he's not on the roster because he wasn't playing, but whatever. So they went from a team that was well over the cap to kind of this question mark of like, what's going to happen? How are they going to fit some of these guys under when they go to this offseason? Because they made the big move for Hannafin, they made the big move for Hurdle. Mantha was another one that it was like, he's a UFA, we'll see what happens. And it ends up being they kept no one. Literally every single pending UFA that the Golden Knights had left. You mentioned a bunch of them. I know you didn't say Carrier. They traded Paul Cotter. They traded Logan Thompson, who requested a trade. I still believe they should have said no. I want to be traded. Our answer is suck it. Like I don't think they should have traded him because he's under the cap and a pretty darn good backup. Now Ilya Samsonov is good, so they did bring in a couple of pieces, like you said. Dorofeyev was a rookie last year, got benched for 6 out of the 7 games in the playoffs. The one game that he did play, he played about 4 minutes, and Cassidy was like, oh, God, this guy can't play. So we'll see. He obviously needs to take a huge step forward to go from that to where they are. Olofsson, it's $1 million. I'm always skeptical of a guy who goes from making 4 or 5 or whatever he was making to now 1, because why? And why did no one else want to pay him more? The stats kind of indicate a reason why. He's not that good, or at least hasn't been, especially away from Eichel. But he was good with Eichel. So there's a chance that maybe that one is halfway decent. The trade for Alex Holtz. New Jersey wanted nothing to do with their former 7th overall pick. And the Golden Knights were like, all right, fine. We'll take him, I guess. And we'll see if he's not terrible here. He got benched by multiple coaches last year, and the Golden Knights have a coach that hates young players and hates guys that don't play well off the puck. We'll see how that goes. So what did they do in the offseason? I guess very little positive, but they did add Hannafin. They did add Hurdle at the deadline. Hurdle was not himself going into last postseason. Hannafin was spectacular. They still have Eichel, Stone, Carlson, Pietrangelo, Theodore. There's a lot of good players still on the roster. There's still a good team, but did they get better from the moment the season ended to now? Absolutely not. And how much worse is going to depend. That's what's going to determine the season. If it's a lot worse, they're not good. If it's not a lot worse, they're okay. And if it's better, I don't know how. If Alex Holtz and Victor Olofsson are good, then they're a really good team again.
The defense, I mean, is about as rock solid as it can get. I don't see really any holes there, any problems. I think it's, bigger question marks when you talk about some of the forward stuff that you mentioned. What are some of the ceilings of some of those players? And then the goaltending stuff too. I mean, you're talking to a couple Caps fans here, so we're pretty familiar with Samsonov, and you're definitely going to want to bring a thing of duct tape to the games and hand it to him so he can actually hold on to his stick. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's glaringly worse, like the goaltending, like you said. I think, I mean, you can't knock Aiden Hill. He's a Stanley Cup champion. And I don't think Samsonov as a backup is really all that worse than you guys were. But I don't know. I do think that the D is definitely your biggest confidence where it should be.
Yeah,
Max
please
right
don't
though.
knock.
Drink every time Sammy drops his stick.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Do not knock on Aiden Hill, please. He gets injured if you do that. So don't touch him. Don't go near him. As long as he's healthy, they'll be fine because he's pretty darn good, at least when he's in there, or at least good enough behind this defense. The challenge for me when it comes to goaltending is you have two guys who, I use the phrase painfully average. I don't think that they're going to steal games for you. I don't think they're going to be the problem. But a lot of guys have gone away in regards to defensive side of the puck. Like they bring in Hannafin, more of an offensive minded player. They get rid of, even though Marchessault was a scorer, they get rid of him. Amadio was a halfway decent to good defensive player. Carrier was a pretty good defensive player, and they're replacing them with a lot of guys who have been cast aside from their previous teams because they don't defend. How is that going to work in front of these goalies that need the system to insulate them? If the system insulates them and Cassidy can get these guys to come along, you're going to say, wow, the Golden Knights have very good goaltending. If the system falls down in front of them, everyone's going to say, what the heck were the Golden Knights going into this season with those two goaltenders?
You know, when I look at this lineup, and you just talked about Adin Hill and injury issues, we'll say, it feels
one way
like
to put
this,
it, yeah.
It feels like this team is one injury away from being like, oh shit. And the reason I say that is like three of the key guys, they've missed significant time last year. Stone, Hurdle, Eichel. I mean, do you have concerns on the depth up front? I'm assuming.
Yeah, 100%. Like there's no question that the strength of the team is the defense, and I think they can withstand just about any injury there. Obviously, it wouldn't be ideal if Hannafin or Pietrangelo goes out because that just shifts everybody up and it's not perfect. But they have Caden Korczak, they have Ben Hutton. Those guys can fill in as 6'5", 6 defensemen. They'll be fine. The other strength is centers. They have a bunch of centers, but there are so few wingers that can play with the centers that it's inevitable that some of the centers are going to have to move to wing. And what then ends up happening is what you're saying. If Mark Stone goes out at some point, which seems fairly probable, if Jack Eichel doesn't have a full 82 games, Carlson, even like a Barbashev or Hurdle or whoever, yeah, it gets really, really thin. And the question is, like, do they have anything in the pipeline to come up and help? And there really doesn't seem like it at the moment. Somebody would have to take a step that we've never seen before, which is going to be awfully difficult for them to do, especially with a coach who does not prefer young players. Like it's just as simple as you can put it. He's an awesome coach. He's had an unbelievable career, but he does not trust young players. So it's going to be difficult. Now, here's 4 of them. You want to play any of these? You need to play all 4. It's going to be tough. We'll see.
Let's talk about a guy that Mac and I are definitely familiar with as Caps fans, Chandler Stevenson. You know, obviously he departs to Seattle. What kind of hole does that leave in this lineup that you'd be looking to replace?
I think the biggest thing with him is just that element of speed. Like he has elite speed. He was literally in the fastest skater competition. I still am not sure what happened there. He looked like he didn't care, but then his time was like not, it was like, okay. And I don't know. I don't know what to make of that. I'll never find out. But he was actually in the fastest skater competition, not just like some guy says he's fast. No, this dude's actually legitimately fast. The team without him is missing a huge element of speed that worked really, really well with Mark Stone. Going from Stone to Hurdle, that doesn't necessarily mean a step back in player. It might, we'll see, but it definitely means a step back in speed. And without him, they're going to have a real hard time finding a consistent speed line or a consistent speed player on every single line. And that was a huge problem in the playoffs, is when they had Hurdle with Stone, it just never got moving fast enough to make problems for the opposing defenses. So that's probably the biggest thing. That being said, I think pretty much everybody's in agreement. The Golden Knights were in no place to sign Chandler Stevenson for $7.5 million for however long he signed for. So it's like that one was kind of, at some point you have those, we won the cup, dude gets a boost because he's got 2 cups. Is he really the player that the contract indicated? Probably not. That one was tricky. Marchessault, on the other hand, they had room for $5 million to retain the Conn Smythe winner. Like that one will baffle me until I go to the deathbed. Like I will never understand how they didn't figure that one out.
I feel bad because it sounds like we're just absolutely trashing the offseason, and that's not really the purpose. But
Well,
like,
I mean, the offseason itself was terrible. Like there's no real way around it. The offseason was bad. But if you go back and say, all right, well, how good was the team on the day that they lost? They were pretty darn good.
they're
Like
pretty
they
good.
could have beaten Dallas in that series. They probably then go on to beat Colorado. I don't know what happens against Edmonton. They were not far off. They lost in the first round. They were not far off. All of this goes away. They still have a lot of good players because they had a ridiculous amount of good players when they left the ice on Cinco de Mayo in Dallas. Like that's the offseason sucked. There's no way around it. They lost like 7 starters. Like there's no way around it. But are they a terrible team now? Absolutely not. Like in no way can anyone say that. I still think they're the second best team in the division.
I think you make a great point
Ooh.
too. And let's be real, that first round matchup between them and Dallas was one of the heaviest first
Brutal.
round
Yeah.
matchups
It
we
was
have ever
brutal. Yeah.
seen.
That team was great. The Golden Knights were good. They went to 7 games. Vegas hit the post twice on wide open nets in game 7, and the puck that went in off of Alec Martinez's skate. Like they were right there. Was Dallas better? I'll say yes. I think Dallas was better in the series, but it was not a runaway. It was not a butt kicking. It wasn't anything of that sort. So yeah, it's tough to kind of go back and look at that and say, oh man, you lost in the first round. Your team must stink. I just don't think that's accurate.
So I'm glad you just touched on this because I was gonna start asking you, like, all right, are we still thinking playoffs here? But you just
Yeah,
mentioned
yeah,
second best team in
yeah,
Pacific.
yeah.
I'm assuming you got Edmonton as the one.
It's like a coin flip. It's like one of Edmonton or Vancouver. Like I don't think both are going to be amazing again. I don't know with Canada. You never know. Like all the time, like one Canadian team will just suck. Like Calgary was amazing like 3 years ago, and now they're trash. Like who knows? One of those two teams will stub their toe or something will happen, and Vegas will finish above them. The other one will be like, wow, that team's amazing. And then they'll lose in the second round or something like because Canada.
So Vegas every year, it feels like they're in that tier one contender. You know, it's always like them, the Rangers. You could probably throw the Oilers in there, the Panthers. It always feels like they're right there. Do you still think they're
Tampa.
in that? Yeah, and Tampa. You think
Yeah.
they're still in that same breath now, even after the
Nah,
offseason?
not quite, but we've been here before. The year they won the cup, I thought we went in like, I don't know. I don't know that they quite have everything that they need. And then they go out and they buy Barbashev and things kind of fit. Eichel turned into a superstar. Marchessault wins the Conn Smythe. Like none of that really made sense in the moment before the season. So it's like, maybe. Right now, I would say no. The team as currently constructed cannot and will not win the Stanley Cup. That being said, this is not the roster that they will play the Stanley Cup playoffs with. Like it never is. It isn't for most teams. Like, it just isn't, and it won't be. So that's where we'll have to see how things change.
So on that note, let's say we approach deadline time. They're maybe like second or third in the division. Let's say they're flirting with a wild card spot. What addition do you see this team making? Do you see that being like a depth forward? Really, I don't think we need another defenseman here looking at this roster. So I would
No,
assume maybe like I don't know, like a 3C or another scoring winger, perhaps.
I think it's going to depend on how much of these. And I need a nickname. Maybe you guys can help me. They have 4 players who are all kind of the same. They're all offensive minded. They all have questions about their defense. They all have ridiculously good shots. They're all good on the power play. It's Dorofeev, Brisson, Olofsson, and Holtz. The collection of those 4, if 2 of them score 25 goals, then all they need is like a lockdown winger, right? Like a defensive winger. But if all 4 of them are stapled to the bench because Cassidy doesn't play that type of player, then they're going to need someone who, like, I don't know, Jonathan Marchessault would be a nice option for them to have at this moment, right? Like, they may need someone who can play on the wing of Jack Eichel and put 40 goals in, or at least 30, right? Is that going to be one of those? Come on, you got a Fantastic Four. That's wrong. Like we,
Mac, this sounds
okay,
like your wheelhouse.
Yeah, like you got to give me something. Like we need, and I need it because for the next month I'm going to be referring to the four of them as a collective group.
Just like fantastical four, because I think if you wanted
But
them to
they're not
score,
though.
it'd
That's
be a
the
fantasy
problem.
dream, though. That's the
Yeah,
thing. Yeah,
fantasy four.
there
Oh
you
yeah,
go.
like yeah, okay. Like now I'm getting that sounds like inappropriate to me, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't want. We don't. Nobody needs to. But okay, so that's if any of them can be great, can take that step, can be the guy, then you're probably looking for a depth winger who can help defend. Like, can we put someone next to Carlson and they play and they steal top line minutes? Like they play against the Eichel or the McDavids and McKinnons and those guys. If none of those four can truly take that step, you need a superstar winger. And that's where it's going to probably have to come down to, are you willing to trade Theodore before his contract expires?
Wow.
Because so let me just quickly, because I'm sure most people don't know this. The Golden Knights traded their pick in 2021, their first round pick in 2021. They traded their first round pick in 2022. That was David Edstrom in 2022 and Zach Dean in 2021. The 2023 first round pick, or sorry, I'm 1 year off. They don't have the last two, Edstrom and Dean. The one that they just picked in 2024, only because they hosted the draft at the Sphere and they had to retain their pick, is Trevor Connolly, who is like a very good hockey player, but has more baggage than many Raider players have brought to their team. He's untradeable at the moment. If they were to offer him in a trade, every other team is going to be like, well, what did he do? Why are you offering him in the trade? He's untradeable. I think he can be a great player, but at the moment, I think he's untradeable. They don't have next year's first round pick. They don't have the following year's first round pick. So of the last 5 first round picks, they have one, and he's untradeable. It's going to be awfully difficult to go out and buy a superstar winger like they have done in the past when you don't have any of those picks available to you. So that's where unrestricted free agent Theodore already have 2 stud defensive players on your team, 2 both locked up for 3 years. It makes sense that maybe he becomes the trade chip, but it's September. They haven't done it yet. If they were planning on doing it, they probably would have wanted to get the full year of him being on another team. Every single day that ticks by, he becomes less valuable because his contract's expiring. So that's going to be the trick, is like, how much do our fantasy 4 fill in that gap before you decide, we've got to pull a ripcord and get rid of Theodore and buy someone else?
How about the fishy four? Because we don't know what we're going to get from him. It's a little
Ooh,
fishy.
It's not bad. That's not bad. Yeah, I like that. I like that. I'm afraid that I call them the fishy 4 and like all of them score 20 goals and like, you thought they all sucked. I'm like, yeah, kind of.
that's when you change his
Yeah,
name.
but the nickname,
Fantastic.
like it was nickname was, yeah, okay, go ahead.
No, you're good. All I was gonna say is Theodore's a hell of a chip to have in the back pocket if you
Yeah,
need to dish
yeah.
it. That guy will get you a haul. I mean, there's not many of him on the market.
Even,
Yeah,
I mean,
dude,
you mentioned he's going down in value. That's obviously how that works. But I mean, even at the deadline, you'll get a haul for him, even if he's only a rental for a couple of years. I mean, that teams get desperate, and
right.
and somebody will need a defenseman
And who
of that
knows?
caliber.
Maybe you find the team that'll re-sign him right away. You find that sign and trade,
True.
and
Yeah.
like you can probably. I think it's reasonable to say you're getting a first round pick value out of him, which means you basically can have anybody you want on the market at the deadline. Again, though, where is the team going to be at that point, and how easy is it going to be to just cast Theodore aside at that point? Like, it's not going to be the easiest move.
Carolina's just sitting there going, "Oh my God, another defenseman that we can sign for 8 years. We need him now."
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's basically what Vegas has been doing for the last. Would it shock me if Vegas signs him for 8 years? No, I don't think they will. But no, it wouldn't. I don't understand it. I'm still trying to figure out what the power play is going to look like, because they have 3 power play quarterbacks and they have a coach who doesn't use 2 defensemen on a power play. I don't know which one fits. So that also confuses me. We'll see what happens there. I might get some answers to that tomorrow. We'll see. Camp opens.
Yeah, training camp season is upon us, but we appreciate the time, Ken. Hell of a breakdown. And if anyone is looking for Vegas Golden Knights updates, news, opinions, takes, Ken's the guy. Sinbin Vegas.
Thanks for having me.